Greetings and welcome to the Voices Less Said podcast show with Dr. PMak, a show where I'm always delighted to be speaking with people doing fantastic things around the world. I call it ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And today I'm speaking to Mr. Tapfuma Musewe, who is a seasoned trade and investment executive with over 15 years of experience in advancing emerging markets and fostering regional leaders. Hailing from Zimbabwe in Southern Africa, he has done extensive work across Southern Africa and is recognized as one of the top 25 people shaping the future of Canada-Africa relations. As the founder of AfriFusa, he has built one of Canada's foremost platforms for bridging African and Canadian innovation ecosystems through trade and investment. And as the Associate Director of Sustainable Finance at EY Alliance, he empowers entrepreneurs in global emerging markets to scale using innovative finance solutions. Tapfuma has received several accolades, including the 2022 African Scholars Global Impact Award and the 2024 Ebo Award from the University of Toronto, reflecting his dedication and community engagement and academic excellence. Join me today as I have a fantastic conversation with Tapfuma Musewe. You know, Tapfuma, just reading through the work that you have done, which has been amazing, and I've already introduced you to my guests. So one of the things that I learned about you is your work with not only sort of local but even federal ministers in terms of just advising and advancing Canada's Africa strategy. So it had me thinking, what percentage of politicians know about Africa? When you talk to them, like, how do you convince them that Africa is just not perhaps a charity case, that there is a strong economic case for Canada to engage with Africa? Let's start there.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Patrick, for having me on this podcast. I'm really excited to get into this conversation with you. It's been great getting to know you over the last few months.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I don't think I can answer that percentage question with any authority. But yeah, I think so. The thing is this, right? The context in which I've been engaging with these politicians has been specifically through the mandate which came from the Trudeau government
Okay.
to develop an Africa strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So when I've been invited to speak, to round tables and that kind of thing, it's always been in that context, and it's generally been with ministers, foreign affairs,
Okay.
trade, national development. So there is a view of the continent. And I must say, there's one particular roundtable we did with the Minister of International Development, which was the Honorable Ahmed Hussein.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in 2024. And so he's holding this international development portfolio, and I'm thinking that this is going to be like really sort of standard, get out there and try and save the world with Western aid.
Yeah.
But I was so pleasantly surprised, actually, because the conversation was really actually around private and public sector partnerships.
Okay.
Development. So almost really private sector led development, so you can think about social entrepreneurship, and businesses that are, have these sort of impact sort of guidelines baked into it and objectives. And that was really refreshing for me. And I was completely surprised by that. So that was a positive experience. But I think, one of the things that is certainly the context is we're having these conversations within a context, a federal context where there's been no Africa strategy.
Yeah.
So the fact that Canada's Africa strategy was only published for the first time in March of 2020, right? Tells you that we are operating in a context where there's very little, perhaps, value placed on the continent, and and that has been, we've had to work for years
Yeah.
to try and shift that narrative.
Well, I mean, you do bring up something that's jumping up into my mind right now, right? So, part of your work, right, has been to sort of engage with investors, and I know that you've engaged and sort of facilitated over $1 billion worth of deal flows, right, between continents, and so. Just let me into your world a little bit. So, when Canadian investors, for example, first hear about African opportunities, so do their eyes light up, or there's sort of, wow, dollar signs, there's money there, or there's this notion of, wow, Africa, and then sort of stereotyping kind of things, falling into place. How do you pitch? How do you pitch Africa? How do you pitch a continent that's really, really diverse and wide with so many opportunities? How do you pitch Africa to investors?
Yeah, and so a lot of that deal flow was for international investors and not just
Oh, okay.
Canadian.
Not just
Um,
Canadian. Okay.
yeah, but of course, me being based here in Canada,
Yeah.
the Canadian context was like the main landscape in which I was operating.
Yeah.
And you know what I found is that firstly, institutional investors, when this is probably going back about 4 or 5 years ago now,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about our pension funds and
Okay.
so on.
Yeah.
We're really focused on Asia.
Mm.
So, Southeast Asia,
Mm-hmm.
South Asia, and so on. And
Mm-hmm.
Africa was very far out of the purview for most of them,
Okay.
especially as part of a sort of strategic region,
Okay.
where they were focused. I found the same thing as well with the trade diversification efforts that were being undertaken
Mm.
by some of our provinces, especially the
Mm.
province of Ontario, where I was based at
Okay.
the time. So again, in terms of identifying priority markets, Africa as a continent
Mm-hmm.
just did not figure at
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
and it's still very much the case, even in provinces which are a lot more Africa forward
Okay.
across Canada.
Yeah.
The province of Alberta and Quebec have been
Yeah.
actually very active, when it comes to Africa engagement. And so, what I found with institutional investors that that appetite typically has not been there.
Okay.
With private investors, you do find that there are some in the VC space, even some, in the venture capital space, that is, and some
Mm-hmm.
in the private equity space,
Mm-hmm.
only a few of those who do have a thesis, an investment thesis that does incorporate Africa.
Okay.
But what I've found is that you have to know them,
Yeah.
and that there's at some of our events we've brought together funds which have actively deployed finance into
Okay.
African markets
Mm-hmm.
and had no idea of each other, had not met each other yet.
Wow. Wow. So you've just and thinking of Alberta, you just come out of the G7, right,
Mm.
recently, and one of the things that you wrote about or that you mentioned was that Canada, I mean, Africa seems to be an afterthought for Canada, right? And so, again, coming out of the G7, what do you think has been the most perhaps embarrassing example of where Canada has missed the boat, perhaps? While you talk about Asian countries, we can even speak about China and India and others are making very strategic moves in Africa. In which sectors do you think that Canada has perhaps missed the boat? Maybe not too late, but yeah, maybe missed the boat.
I mean, so what we did in Alberta was we held an event on the sidelines. It was one of only two events
Mm-hmm.
globally that was focused on Africa at the G7.
Uh-huh.
So I wasn't actually part of the G7. We just created this
Yeah,
space on the
the side
sidelines,
event. Mm-hmm.
right? And brought Canadian officials
Sure.
and officials from across the continent and so on
Mm-hmm.
together. And what I would say is that we were advocating for Africa to be on the agenda.
Okay.
Now, in previous G7s held here in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
there has been a focus. Canadian prime ministers have taken it upon themselves to say, look, we need to engage the continent,
Okay.
and usually around some kind of development,
Yeah.
focus.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. And I know that you travel a lot between, Canada and Africa. And, I think of you and your travels, perhaps in a sense of being a cultural code switcher, right? Moving
Oh,
in
that's
between
interesting.
these different cultures.
I want to hear more about that.
So, so
Yeah.
I mean, this other time I was having a conversation with you, and you were in Nairobi, Kenya. I mean,
Mm,
obviously the time zone, and you were up late, and then that kind of thing. And
yeah.
so when you move into these different spaces, right? So the
Mm,
Canadian context and the African, and by the way, I don't think there's one African context, right? So there are multiple African contexts
thank
that
you.
exist. I
Mm,
think of Cameroon, for example, that has over
mm,
250 plus official languages,
mm.
and I mean, which creates multiplicity of
Yeah,
contexts. And
absolutely.
so,
Yeah, nuance.
for our listeners here, I don't want them to think that, well, there's just one African context. There are,
Absolutely.
varied contexts. Um, what do you see as the sort of main cultural difference when it comes to doing business? Are Africans or African business leaders too direct for the Canadian sort of polite way of doing business? How have you seen the way of doing business between Africa and Canada, in particular, maybe the spaces and the countries? And I know you've traveled, between Ghana, Nairobi, South Africa. How have you seen the differences as it pertains to Canadian business culture?
That's a great question.
Mm.
That's a great question, and I observed
Mm.
some, differences and also
Mm.
similarities, which are surprising sometimes.
Okay.
So yeah, so in terms of differences, I
Mm.
would say one of the key things around African businesses is a
Mm.
lot of them are driven by entrepreneurs
Yeah.
who see an opportunity
Yeah.
and don't have some, treasure trove of data
Okay.
that's backing them, going for this opportunity.
Mm.
So not data in the way that we consume it in the
Yeah.
West, where
Yeah.
we want to have, the stats, we want to have
Yes. Yeah.
the market size, we want to
Yeah.
have all of the sort of kind of detailed, granular
Yeah.
breakdowns of who
Yeah.
our customers could
Yeah.
be,
The
um,
demographics and all of these things. Yeah.
demographics,
Hmm.
exactly, right? So a lot of that data is very hard to come by and has not even been collected to begin with
Yeah.
across African markets. So you have these
Mm.
entrepreneurs who have learned to assess their environments
Okay.
using different data,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
using different data, right? And they're making these calculations in their heads, in conversations and so
Sure.
on
Hmm.
with others in their teams. And they're
Hmm.
saying there's an opportunity, let's go for it. So there's this boldness,
Wow. Okay.
around entrepreneurship in
Yeah.
Africa, which
Yeah.
I just admire so much and have
Yeah.
learned so much from.
Yeah.
I think that's one main difference that I've seen.
Mm. That's
Yeah.
that's interesting because I think I've kind of come through with that sort of bold and audacious way of doing business. I speak with colleagues even at the university or in the community, and I'm like, this is a gap. Don't you guys see it? Like, let's jump in with it. Like, well,
Yeah.
Patrick, how many people are you gonna serve? I'm like, never mind all of that. There's a gap. There's no one doing this right now. Let's do it.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's amazing. And part
Yeah.
of the work that you have done, Tapfuma, across the continent of Africa, and in South Africa in particular, tell us a little bit more about your connection with students in South Africa. I know you've been, teaching through University of Toronto. When we talk about the sort of diversity, and we talk about the differences that we just speaking about, what have you seen? What assumptions do perhaps some Canadian students have about Africa, or what, as you engage with them, as you teach them, what are the kind of things that blow their minds away? What are the kind of things that
Mm.
fascinate them, and also vice versa too? What are the things that their South African peers find about Canada fascinating?
Yeah, so so I've been taking students, a group of about 20 usually, to
Wow.
Cape Town for a couple of
Yeah.
summers through what's called the Summer Abroad program at the University
Okay.
of Toronto. And
Yeah.
it's great because what happens is they go for 3 weeks
Hmm.
to Cape Town,
Okay.
and the idea is to engage in what's called inclusive consulting.
Uh-huh.
And so it's very impact oriented. It's very ESG kind of grounded, this
Okay.
consulting model,
Yeah.
and it's around stakeholder consultation. There's some really key aspects there that I think are fantastic,
Mm.
and I find every single time
Yeah.
that it is a life-changing experience for,
Wow.
I'm going to say 85 to call it 95% of the students.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Most of the students have never been to the continent,
Yeah.
you know, and are
Wow.
often immigrants themselves. A
Oh,
lot of
wow.
them, for
Okay.
instance, from across Asia
Mm-hmm.
and different parts, like, from the Caribbean,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yeah, you have these students who have these preconceived notions, and they land in Cape Town in one of the most luxurious corners
Yeah.
of the continent,
Yeah.
staying at the V&A waterfront, which you
Oh
probably know,
boy.
right? In the lap of luxury, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So they land there, and there's already, like, some calculations happening, like, oh, I didn't know Africa had it like this.
And then you've got the Table Mountains in the backdrop there, and they
Table
probably see cable cars
Mountain,
going up and down.
yeah, Lions Peak, and all the vineyards and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but the consulting takes them into one of the oldest townships, and townships for your listeners are these, high density areas
Mm-hmm.
where Black people had to live,
Yeah.
under apartheid.
Yeah.
And so they go to Langa. We take them to Langa
Yeah.
usually,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they work with micro entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So these are entrepreneurs who have, hair salons, or doing
Uh-huh.
nails, or
Mm-hmm.
laundry or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And what for me, what I really look for is that almost aha moment where the
Okay.
student starts to realize, oh my goodness, this human being is taking care of their families,
Mm-hmm.
families
Yep.
often, their
Mm-hmm.
community.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to build something of value beyond just making money,
Mm-hmm.
and they have, so little that's working for them, or there to assist them in this,
Yeah.
compared to where I come from.
Yeah.
They don't have steady electricity a lot
Yeah.
of the times.
True.
They have to deal with, safety and security issues.
Yeah.
Very little access to cash and to
Yeah.
capital. They can't
True.
just get a loan to start a business.
True. Yeah.
And probably have not achieved the levels of education that a lot of
Yeah.
them have. Even
Yeah.
though some of them have, some of them actually been master's students,
Mm.
but are still working in these extremely resource constrained environments.
Yeah.
And the gargantuan effort that these entrepreneurs make,
Yeah.
take care of themselves and their families and their communities,
Yeah.
is something that you just see these students develop this incredible level of respect,
Wow.
for these humans that they are called to consult.
Yeah.
And usually it's a reversal where
Yeah.
the students are the ones that are learning the most,
Wow.
through being in this environment,
Yeah.
rather than, the entrepreneur, receiving all this incredible wisdom and business
Yeah.
building expertise from these
Yeah.
students
Yeah.
who have
Yeah.
not even run a business themselves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we go in knowing that, and it's just such a pleasure to see that happen with them.
Wow, that's an amazing, not only just a cultural experience, but just an amazing way of learning, right? That, one of
Yeah.
the things that I always advance, even in the university, is, yeah, theories and textbooks and all of these things are one way of learning, but being on the ground, being immersed in community, I think is a very, very important aspect of learning, and you are providing that opportunity. And of course, the ability to, stay 3 weeks in the V&A and the waterfront there, and then partake of just these beautiful, beautiful lands. Congratulations, by the way, Tapfuma, being named, top 25, one of the top 25 people who are shaping Canada-Africa relations. And as I thought about that, I thought about, well, there are perhaps forces, or I don't know, maybe let me just call them forces, that work towards damaging relations, perhaps between, Canada and Africa. And so, as we were talking about, heading out to South Africa with students every summer, and thinking about relations, what are some of the obstacles that you face, perhaps even on the African continent, obstacles that you face in terms of bringing or taking students there? And similarly, too, are there any obstacles that you face from the Canadian side, right? Or challenges, or things I don't want to put there are things that I'm thinking about, and so maybe perhaps do you have do you face any challenges? Do you face any obstacles? Are there any barriers to growing, the program that you have at U of T? How does that look like?
Yeah, so there certainly are challenges, and
Hmm.
this is where I really want to shout out Professor Ann Armstrong, because
Okay.
she's actually the professor who has owned and run this summer abroad program for
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
I think it's now it just was in its 10th year.
10th
Uh,
year. Wow, that's
yeah.
amazing.
So she's been the driving force,
Mm.
and as part of the institution,
Yeah.
uh, every year there are ways in which she has to justify that
Yeah.
this is an important program. This
Yeah.
has to happen. It's a very unique program. A lot
Wow.
of other programs are in Europe or
Yeah.
in Asia,
Yeah.
and going to museums and
Hmm.
doing or you're partnering with university and doing a
Hmm.
course there. This is very different, and it's come with its challenges at times,
Yeah.
where we've had students, just have some kind of experiences which
Sure.
may, kind of bode negatively on it,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it's a learning experience and everyone comes back okay,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
So thankfully, a lot of those sort of internal politics and issues are ones that I have not had to address
Okay.
at
Yeah.
all. It's
Yeah.
really her who's done that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think one of the things I would love to see is
Mm.
more African diasporan students
Yeah.
going on these trips.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think one of the barriers is cost, right? It's really costly to
Yeah.
do a summer abroad program. You're
Yeah. Yeah.
paying for everything, the
Yeah.
V&A waterfront hotel,
Yeah.
it's not
I
cheap,
know. I
right?
know. I know. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some of the barriers. I think
Okay.
accessibility for
Okay.
our diasporans,
Okay. That's interesting, and thanks for sharing that. And so I know we just dove into the work that you have been doing. But I'll be sad if I don't get to ask you this question actually, and I should have done it earlier. What got you into it? Like what got you into this work? Particularly even just looking at, okay, I want to drive Canada Africa relationships. I want to make sure that there's investments, that there's deal making, that there's with an equity
Mm.
lens in it. What got you into it? Was it a passion of yours right from high school into university?
Yeah, it's a great question. And one of the things I'm grateful for is that my parents grew us
Mm.
up here in Canada,
Hmm.
um, with almost a Pan-Africanist
Yeah.
worldview and
Hmm.
exposure. We
Wow.
constantly had family and really close friends, coming from usually across Southern Africa and Western
Okay.
Africa,
Hmm.
come and live with us, stay with
Oh,
us.
good.
And there was always an exchange of culture.
Yep.
And I think, for me as a young boy growing up, it just expanded my mind, you
Wow.
know, and taught me a different sensibility
Hmm.
around some of the cultures, for instance, that I would observe growing up here in Canada, but being like, you know what, but we do this differently,
Yeah.
with my uncles or
Yeah.
with my aunts or my cousins,
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
So I think there was always that kind of connection to the continent. And the moment that I could, when I finished my undergraduate, I moved to South Africa. I was working in Soweto for about a month.
Oh, in Soweto.
In Soweto, yeah, I was
Wow.
doing some youth projects there,
Yep.
and was trying to do some music stuff too. Back
Hmm.
when I was into some of that. And basically, I
Wait,
ended
wait,
up.
wait, wait. What sort of music were you? Come on, don't gloss over that. Tell us.
I have to gloss over that. That's back when I was younger and a little more with it. A
Okay, okay,
little more with
okay.
it, had a little more hair,
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the
yeah.
top. But yeah, yeah, I was really
Oh,
into, to the music, and
yeah.
it's still a big part of my life, but in a different way.
Oh, so
And
good.
so I was looking for musicians, in particular hip hop artists to work with in Soweto. There's
Wow.
actually a program called Literacy Through Hip Hop, which was pioneered in Regent Park in Toronto.
Oh, really?
And they were taking these youth who were deemed illiterate
Yeah.
and basically using hip hop
Mm.
to rap to help them increase their literacy, because
Wow.
these kids were rhyming off these complex verses but were
Wow.
getting low marks, English language marks in school, and they said there's a disconnect here.
There's a disconnect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can't remember the name of the guy who pioneered this program, and it worked.
Hmm.
It really worked. These kids started getting better marks at
Wow.
school.
Wow.
And so I was with a couple of, couple of guys at the time. I was looking at, seeing if we could roll this program out in Soweto. That was part of what I was trying to do. That
Okay.
didn't work out,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but nevertheless, I was working with youth, and I
Hmm.
just fell in love with it. And
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
realized, I said, a lot of what I had studied at school, which was in the sciences and
Yeah.
specifically malaria research,
Hmm.
was really an excuse for me to be on the continent,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And once I was able to identify that, I said, okay, I think then instead of pursuing the sciences, which I was good at, but I wasn't
Hmm.
incredibly passionate about,
Yeah.
I said, let me work in community, let me do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And that was really me making decisions around a life direction, which would
Mm.
focus myself on,
Mm.
socioeconomic development on the continent.
Yeah.
And that has just evolved and changed and transformed over the years, I would say.
Wow. And so, talking about that transformation and change over the years, one of the things that you've said to me in conversations is that, you know, aside from your background too, like your African theology degree was in some ways helped you to shape, sort of frameworks and ways of thinking. And you've mentioned, the aunts, the cousins, the people that will come into your home and influence how you work, or at least how you view the continent and how you view relationships. Not only just relationships too, but sort of how you also honor your African sort of ancestry. And so this leads me to, and I know we are running out of time, but just leads me to speaking about some of your current work with the African Diaspora Leaders Coalition. Could you just talk to us a little bit more about your vision for that?
Hmm. Yes, so the African Diaspora Leaders Coalition was really born out of a very important moment, which
Mm.
was the publishing of Canada's Africa Strategy,
Yeah.
which we had been consulting the government on for years.
Mm. Mm.
And, many even before me had been
Mm.
pushing our government for some kind of strategy.
Yeah.
And when that was published, it was a galvanizing moment
Mm.
where many of us, yourself, myself, and
Yeah.
many of our other diasporan leaders
Yeah.
felt very strongly about
Yeah.
this piece of
Yeah.
strategy that was
Yeah.
published, and I recognize that as an opportunity
Mm.
to bring us all together,
Yeah.
as a pan-Canadian coalition
Mm-hmm.
of like-minded, African diasporans who were serious
Mm.
around advancing Canada-Africa relations in a
Yeah.
way that is equitable,
Yeah.
that centers us as a
Yeah.
diaspora,
Yeah.
and can have tangible impacts economically,
Mm.
like for us and in the development space, humanitarian space
Mm.
as well, and cultural exchanges as well.
Yeah.
And so that's how it was born, and I really wanted it to reflect the priorities of
Mm.
people at the table.
Yep.
As you know, we operate with an Ubuntu sort of
Yep.
philosophy and
Mm-hmm.
mindset,
Mm-hmm.
which always
Mm-hmm.
says we value every person at that table,
Yep.
especially when they diverge from our points of view,
Yep.
because that creates a space for a robust engagement where any solutions that come out of that do
Mm.
take everything into account and can
Mm.
really reflect, um, the needs and the priorities of the community that will
Yep.
drive them and create longevity.
Yep.
I'm really excited about it. I'm excited that you're a part of it.
Yeah.
You know, great minds coming together and really advocating, together
Yeah.
for Canada-Africa
Yeah.
relations.
I mean, thank you so much again for the invitation for me to participate in such an important engagement. And yeah, I mean, I'm all in for a Ubuntu mindset, right? Where it's about community, it's about all of us. And, one of the things that I continually reflect on, not only just, with my family, but with friends and in community, is that an Ubuntu mindset says to me that if the community is sick or the community is unwell for various reasons, whether it's sort of you want to go down to sort of the social issues or economic issues, etc., then we are all not well,
Mm.
right? And so I love the notion that the Africa Diaspora Leaders Coalition is trying to advance the Canadian African strategy in an equitable manner, in a way that honors the African continent and the multiple contexts that exist within that continent. but also does that in a way that respects and honors and values Canadian culture and Canadian ways of being as well. And so thank you for leading that work, and certainly look forward to growing with the work as it were. Tapfuma, I normally don't get my guests to leave the show without answering this question. And my question is always if you were to have dinner with three people, living or dead, who would they be and why?
Okay, well, the first one, because
Uh-huh.
we spoke about music, not in any particular order, but Yassine Bey.
Yasin Bey.
Yassine
Oh.
Bey is
Uh-huh.
is formerly known as Mos Def,
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah.
he's a hip hop artist
Yep.
who has had an incredible impact on culture,
Yep.
on around the world. In fact,
Yep.
as an activist,
Yep.
and like I think has a profound understanding
Mm,
of the evolution of hip hop,
mm,
in this to where we are today,
yep.
and really how it reflects the human condition.
Mm,
And I think that's really special. That sort
that's
of
good.
that insight and ability to articulate that.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
would love to tap into. I would love to have just like a great conversation
Yep. That's
around
awesome.
the human condition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, so that's one. Man, this is a
That's one.
hard this is a hard task.
That's
How much time do I have?
I leave the hard one for the last.
um, hmm. And they have to be alive and present today,
Oh
right?
no, or even dead. Like you say, oh, I would love to have dinner with this person. Unfortunately, they're late now, but I would have loved to have sat down with them. So anyone, really.
Okay, so the second person I'm going to say who is living is Ibrahim Traore.
Aha.
And this is the leader of Burkina Faso.
Of Burkina Faso. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by his vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I know his vision will reflect the people around him too, but
Yep.
the vision that he has for a self-sustainable, self-directed country,
Yep.
you know,
Mm.
um, and and elevating the status of the country to a
Of the
place where
country.
it
Yeah.
really takes care of its citizens.
Yep.
I'm fascinated by it, really
Oh
fascinated
yeah.
by that.
I'm fascinated by his journey and the story that's unfolding out in Burkina Faso. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
Absolutely amazing.
absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. So,
Yep.
to
Yep.
the second
Yep.
person,
Yep.
uh, just one more, right?
One more, and then you're off the hook.
Let's make this a good one. Um, hmm. I think the third person is going to be Ava DuVernay.
Aha.
Yeah, as
Wow, your list is very interesting. I love love it. Uh-huh.
yeah, as like this really important cultural icon.
Yeah. Yeah. Ava's work is amazing, man. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Mm.
know, she's just played such a phenomenal role
Yeah.
in creating these experiences,
Yeah.
for us as a
Yeah.
community and others
Yes.
to see our experiences reflected back to us
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
African diasporans, Black community,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and and I would love to tap into that creative genius
Mm.
and and just have a really interesting conversation with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Ava would be interesting too, right? Even just
yeah,
how she has, managed to translate these stories of our ancestors and history
hmm,
into film, right?
yeah,
And with
absolutely.
that, still
Yeah,
be able to convey powerful messages of, solidarity, of unity, and just the importance of being rooted in a culture, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I would be a plus one. If you want me to carry your bags or anything, I would do that for all of your
It's a deal.
conversations.
It's a
I would
deal.
love just to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
Tapfuma Musewe, you've traveled a lot and you've been in South Africa, and in South Africa there's this saying, "Sawubona," And so, my brother Sawubona, I see you, I recognize you, I see the work that you're doing in community. Part of the reason why I'm having this podcast show is to do that, to Sawubona, to see people, to recognize them, to recognize the efforts and the work that they're doing to advance the causes that are near and dear to them. And as they do that, as you do that, right, working towards living this world a better place. My brother, please receive your flowers from me, from our team, for the work that you're doing to strengthen our community, to strengthen not only Canada in its sort of diversity, but in bringing to the fore the importance of having equitable Canada-Africa relations. My guests, my listeners, Tapfuma Musewe is a seasoned executive, someone whose mind and whose presence is just so calming, and the way he chairs meetings, I'm like, I think I hit you up one day. I was like, dude, like, how do you even chase such intense conversations and you're just chilled and you're just calm and
A lot of training.
Man, I'm learning a lot from you. Thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for coming on to the show today. We appreciate you, and have a great rest of the day.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu.
Ngiyabonga.
South African. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I really appreciate being on here and having this conversation with you. Thanks for holding the space for us to do that. Really
awesome. Thank you so much, Tapfuma. Thank you for listening to the Voices Listed podcast with Dr. PMak. I hope you enjoyed insights that came out of this conversation. Keep your notifications on. Our next episode will be dropping soon. Thank you and enjoy.